Have you ever walked into a room and felt like something was off, but couldn't explain why? You saw the faces, heard the words, yet missed what was really happening beneath it all. Most people think they're in control, when in truth, they're being read like an open book. The Stoics taught that power comes not from speaking, but from seeing clearly. In this video, we'll explore how to sharpen that inner sight, to move silently, wisely, and far ahead of the crowd. If you're ready to see what others miss, stay with me. What comes next might change the way you move through the world. 1. Detach from emotion. See with clarity. There's a kind of blindness most people carry that no eye test can detect. It doesn't stop you from seeing people's faces or hearing their words, but it makes you miss the truth behind them. It clouds the intentions, distorts the energy, and disguises the obvious. You think you're seeing the world as it is, but really, you're seeing it through the lens of your emotions, and that lens lies. Modern society teaches you to react quickly, loudly, automatically. Every time someone disagrees with you, you feel threatened. Every time someone ignores you, you feel invisible. You walk into a room and wonder, do they like me? Instead of asking, what is actually happening here? You start talking and wonder, did I sound confident? Instead of wondering, what did that silence mean? This kind of living is noisy, frantic, exhausting, and worst of all, it's blind. Stoicism offers a different way. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it, and it is in your power to wipe out this judgment now." That sentence might just be the cure for emotional blindness, because the moment you stop letting your feelings define what something means, you start seeing it as it really is. This is the first step toward outsmarting anyone without them knowing. Remove the fog, so your mind becomes a mirror, clear, still, reflective. Let me give you an example. A young man once walked into a meeting. It was his first day joining a high-level strategic team. He was nervous. His palms were sweaty, heart racing. He felt like he didn't belong. And because of that emotion, he sat quietly, spoke hesitantly, and interpreted every neutral expression from others as a judgment on his worth. After the meeting, he walked out thinking, they probably think I'm not sharp enough. But here's what he didn't see. One of the senior managers had actually leaned forward while he was speaking, slightly nodding. Another scribbled something down in a notebook. The head of the meeting had paused before responding to his point, not out of dismissal, but out of consideration. He had missed all of this, not because he wasn't intelligent, but because he was looking through emotion, not observation. Now, contrast that with the Stoic way. When a Stoic walks into a room, they don't rush to speak. They don't analyze their performance in real time. They watch, they breathe, they pay attention to how people respond, not just to them, but to each other. They study rhythms. Who interrupts whom? Who avoids eye contact? Who changes tone when a superior enters? Who talks too much to mask insecurity, and who speaks less but carries more weight? This isn't mind reading. This is simply seeing what is actually there without emotional interference. You might be thinking, but how do I stop reacting? How do I observe without judgment? The answer is simple, but not easy. Practice detachment. Detachment doesn't mean cold indifference. It means disciplined distance. It means stepping back from your initial emotional response and asking, is this real? Or is this my projection? Imagine this. You walk into a conversation and someone looks away while you're speaking. Instantly, your mind says, they're bored, they don't respect me. But what if they just got a text that reminded them of something urgent? What if they're socially anxious? What if you're wrong? The Stoic never assumes. The Stoic verifies. Epictetus said, It's not events that upset us, but our interpretation of them. Every day, people misread reality because they're too caught up in themselves. And that's the great paradox. When you're overly focused on yourself, you become blind to others. But when you step outside yourself, you start seeing clearly. You hear the unsaid. You notice the micro shift in someone's tone. You catch the momentary hesitation before they answer. You begin to understand human nature, not from guesswork, but from silent study. And here's the key. Observation begins when emotional investment stops. Imagine walking into a room and not needing to be liked, not needing to be validated, not needing to perform, just walking in and observing. You notice that people laugh differently depending on who's in the room. You notice that one person always speaks last, and when they do, everyone listens. You notice subtle alliances, tensions, power dynamics. While others are talking to be seen, you're seeing what they're missing. This is how you gain quiet power. Not by dominating the room, but by understanding it so clearly you can move through it like water, fluid, aware, and deliberate. You become the person who speaks less, but when you speak, it lands, because your words don't come from noise, they come from clarity. But this clarity only comes when you stop reacting emotionally. So, what can you do to build this discipline? Start with silence. Next time you're in a social setting, challenge yourself not to speak right away. Just listen. Watch how people respond to each other. Watch who gets cut off and who gets encouraged. Watch how people shift their bodies depending on who's nearby. This might feel strange at first, but over time, it becomes your superpower. You start to see what others are blind to. Then, practice non-reactivity. Someone makes a passive-aggressive comment. Don't flinch. Don't laugh nervously. Don't mirror their behavior. Just absorb it. Observe it. Hold it up like a coin in the light and examine it. What does this say about them? What are they trying to signal? This is what the Stoics called apatheia, not apathy, but mastery over emotional disturbance. It's not that you don't feel, it's that your feelings don't lead you. In a world addicted to reaction, the calm observer stands out, and people notice. Even if they don't say it, they feel it. They feel your presence, your centeredness, your detachment from the noise. And in that silence, you gain leverage. Not through manipulation, through understanding. You start to notice, for example, that people often look at the person they're attracted to when they laugh. You notice that someone who's insecure will make jokes that subtly insult others to lift themselves. You notice that the person who always needs the last word is usually the one with the weakest position, and you don't judge them for it. You just see it. You register the patterns, and then you act, but only when it serves something higher. The Stoic doesn't speak to be heard. The Stoic speaks when it's useful, when it's necessary, and when it reflects a truth rooted in observation. Because words, once spoken, are like arrows. And if your aim is clouded by emotion, you'll always miss. This is why detachment is the foundation of perception. It clears the lens, it sharpens your sight. It helps you outsmart, not through deception, but through discipline. And if you think this way of living will make you seem cold or distant, think again. True presence, genuine, clear-eyed, grounded presence, is magnetic. People trust the one who sees clearly, because they know that person won't be easily swayed, won't be manipulated, won't be lost in illusion. You become the rare kind of person who makes others feel seen without saying much. Because your attention isn't scattered, it's sovereign. So let me ask you, are you willing to give up the comfort of emotional reactivity to gain the clarity of strategic observation? Are you ready to stop being the person who always needs to be heard and start being the person who sees through the noise? The moment you do, the world starts to look different. Not louder, quieter, not more confusing, more organized. You realize that the chaos wasn't out there. It was in your head. And now that you've cleared it, now that you've made space, you can finally see. And that's when everything changes. But here's the question. What happens when the person you need to observe the most is you? That's where we go next. 2. Observe yourself like a stranger. Most people walk through life assuming they know themselves. They believe their emotions are justified, that their words make sense, that their choices are logical. But belief isn't clarity. Familiarity is not the same as understanding. And here's the hard truth. What you think you are and what others experience when they're around you might be two entirely different things. You may feel confident, but come off as arrogant. You may think you're being funny, but others find you exhausting. You may think you're respected, but people merely tolerate you, and if you never step outside yourself, you'll never know. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology caught up. We suffer more in imagination than in reality, Seneca said. But the reverse is also true. We often imagine ourselves as better, wiser, kinder than we actually are. That's why the greatest journey isn't upward or outward, it's inward. And to walk that path, you have to learn how to observe yourself like a stranger. Start with this idea. What if you're being filmed? What if there's a camera crew following you around for a week, not to judge, not to expose, but simply to study? How would you act if you knew every word, every glance, every reaction was going to be analyzed by someone who doesn't know you, who's trying to figure out who you really are? Would you still make that passive-aggressive joke? Would you still cut people off mid-sentence? Would you still fake a laugh at a joke you found cringeworthy just to avoid feeling left out? That discomfort you feel when you imagine this, that's awareness being born. When you begin observing yourself from a distance, something shifts. You start seeing the patterns you've lived in for years but never questioned. You start noticing that your confident tone is actually rushed, that your calm posture is really forced stiffness, that your laughter in groups is often a reflex, not a reflection of real joy. You realize that you've been performing more than living. I don't say that to insult you. I say that because we all do it, until we learn to stop. Self-observation, in the Stoic sense, is not self-judgment. It's clarity without cruelty. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." When you start seeing your flaws clearly, don't run, don't shame yourself. That moment of discomfort is not the end of your confidence, it's the beginning of your transformation. Let me tell you a story. A young woman named Sarah was always known as the strong one in her group. She was loud, energetic, always had an answer, always stepped up. People relied on her, or so she thought. One day, after a group project went wrong, she overheard two colleagues talking. One said, "Sarah doesn't listen. She just wants to be right." That sentence crushed her. At first, she got angry, defensive, but later that night, she sat down and replayed the meeting in her head. Then again, and she saw it. She didn't listen. She cut people off. She masked her insecurity with certainty. That night, she began journaling. Not about what others did wrong, but about what she actually did, how she spoke, how she reacted. She started to observe her own behavior like she was studying a character in a novel, and over time, she changed. Not for approval, but for peace. Because deep down, she wanted to be someone she could respect, not someone she had to constantly justify. That's what self-observation gives you, not shame, but alignment. And yet, most people avoid it. They live inside their own heads, defending their identity like a fortress. They never ask, is the way I speak helping or hurting? Is the energy I bring into the room peaceful or chaotic? Do people feel lighter or heavier after spending time with me? And so they stay blind, not because they're bad people, but because they never thought to look at themselves from the outside. But what if you did? What if you made it a daily practice to step back and study yourself, not harshly, but honestly? A CEO doesn't just walk into a boardroom and speak. He studies his presence, his tone, his timing. One misstep can cost millions. Why should your life be treated with any less care? You may not be running a company, but you're always representing something, your values, your energy, your example. People are watching whether you know it or not. And the most powerful people in any room aren't the loudest. They're the most self-aware. So start small. Watch how you speak when you're nervous. Are you trying to prove something? Watch how you laugh when others laugh. Are you joining or pretending? Watch how you tell stories. Are you sharing truth or subtly exaggerating to look better? Don't beat yourself up. Just notice. That noticing is gold. It's what the Stoics called prosoche, attention, vigilance over the self. Epictetus trained his students not just in philosophy, but in the daily discipline of observation. Because without that awareness, all the wisdom in the world becomes meaningless. Now, here's a challenge. Tomorrow, act like someone is studying you. Not in a paranoid way, but as an experiment. Imagine your entire day is being turned into a documentary about who you are when no one's looking. Every interaction, every glance, every silent moment. It's all recorded. Then, at night, reflect. What would a stranger learn about you from that footage? Would they see confidence or insecurity? Kindness or ego? Authenticity or performance? At first, this practice might sting. You'll see habits you've never questioned. You'll cringe at how much you seek approval, how often you bend your values just to fit in, but keep going. Because eventually, you'll stop performing. You'll start aligning. You'll begin to build a life so honest that even a stranger observing you would feel something rare: respect. And here's where the Stoic path becomes transformative. You stop trying to control how others see you. You start mastering how you see yourself. And then, paradoxically, others begin to see you differently too. Not because you changed your image, but because you changed your essence. This is what real confidence looks like. It's not walking into a room thinking, "I'm better than everyone here." It's walking in, fully aware of your strengths and your flaws, and knowing you are still enough. That kind of presence doesn't need volume. It doesn't chase validation. It speaks for itself, quietly, consistently, and unmistakably. And just like that, you begin to live from a deeper place. A place where you're not guessing who you are. You know, because you've watched, because you've studied, because you've adjusted. A place where you can look back on your day and say, "That was me, and I'm proud of that." So the next time you feel tempted to defend your behavior or dismiss criticism, pause. Step outside yourself. Observe. Ask, "Is this the kind of person I admire?" If not, change something, even a little, because 0% better is still 0. But 0.1% better every day. That's 36 times better in a year. And in the Stoic worldview, that's everything. Not perfection, but progress. Not performance, but alignment. And once you've learned to see yourself clearly, without flattery, without fear, you begin to realize something else. The way others see you is no longer a mystery, because how you carry yourself begins to shape their perception. And that leads to the next step. What if, simply by how you speak and carry yourself, you could make others take notice without ever asking for it? And that's exactly what we'll explore next. 3. Master the pause. Master yourself. Silence makes people nervous. That's why most conversations today are cluttered with filler words, awkward laughter, and endless explanations that lead nowhere. People are terrified of silence. The moment it stretches just a little too long, someone, anyone, jumps in to fill it. But here's a truth the Stoics understood long before the modern world forgot it. Silence isn't a weakness, it's a weapon, and the person who holds the silence holds the power. We're trained to think that silence is a conversational failure, that if no one's speaking, something has gone wrong. But in reality, silence is one of the most potent tools in human interaction, not because it dominates others, but because it reveals them. When you stop talking, others start showing. They fill the gap with what they think you want to hear, with what they're trying to prove, with what they're trying to hide, and if you're calm enough, quiet enough, still enough, you'll catch it. In Stoic thought, silence is not passive. It is an active practice of presence. Epictetus taught, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." But how often do you truly listen? Not just to words, but to what lies beneath them. A well-timed pause gives others a space to reveal themselves, and in that space, truth lives. Let me tell you a story. There was a young lawyer, fresh out of school, who got a chance to sit in on a high-stakes negotiation between 2 experienced CEOs. He was instructed not to speak, just observe. At the peak of the negotiation, one CEO made an aggressive offer and then stopped speaking. The silence stretched. The other CEO looked tense, shifted in his seat, and after just a few seconds began explaining why the deal was fair, why it benefited both sides, even started offering concessions that weren't asked for. The deal closed minutes later, but the young lawyer never forgot what won that negotiation. It wasn't logic, it wasn't charm, it was silence. Deliberate, confident, patient silence. The same principle applies to everyday life. You don't need to be in a boardroom to use it. You just need to resist the urge to fill every pause. Most people speak not to connect, but to convince. They ramble, over-explain, try to sound smart, try to dominate. But the Stoic doesn't compete in noise. The Stoic speaks less, but lands more. Because when you pause, you signal control. You're not rushing to be heard. You're deciding whether what you're about to say is even worth saying. Try it. In your next conversation, before you respond, pause. Just 2 seconds, that's all. Let the silence hang. Let the other person lean into the space you leave. You'll notice something remarkable. People will reveal more. They'll justify themselves. They'll clarify their motives. They'll expose their insecurities. All because your stillness invites their unraveling. And what's even more powerful is what it does to you. In those 2 seconds, you step out of emotional reactivity. You gain time to assess not just what was said, but why it was said. You begin to hear more than words. You begin to hear intention, and the moment you understand intention, you understand the entire game. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice." That includes conversations. When someone's trying to rattle you through arrogance, manipulation, or subtle dominance, the natural instinct is to match their energy. To speak faster, louder, sharper. But the Stoic pauses, not to retreat, but to choose. To choose whether this is worth responding to, whether it aligns with their values, whether it serves peace or ego. And often, in that pause, the need to respond disappears. But silence isn't just about defense, it's about design. Think of a sculptor carving marble. What gives the statue form isn't just what's carved away, but the space that's left. The same is true in speech. The space between words shapes the message. Too many people fill every moment with noise, and their presence becomes forgettable. But those who pause make every word count. Let's make it practical. Ask yourself, do you over-explain yourself, even when no one asked for clarification? Do you laugh to cover awkwardness, even when something wasn't funny? Do you talk too quickly, as if silence will betray your nervousness? If so, you're not alone, but you're also giving away your power. Every unnecessary word is a withdrawal from your emotional bank account. Every rushed response is a missed opportunity to command the space you occupy. So start reclaiming that space. Begin by owning your silence. Here's another example. A woman named Elise worked in customer relations. She always spoke fast, eager to resolve issues, to prove helpful. But her mentor once told her, "Slow down, let silence do some of the work." So in her next difficult call, when the client finished a long rant, Elise simply said nothing. She stayed quiet, not dismissive, not afraid, just calm. The client, surprised, began speaking again, softer this time, more honest. By the end, they thanked her not just for the solution, but for how she listened. That's what silence does. It creates an opening for trust. But make no mistake, this is a discipline. It takes restraint. At first, you'll feel the urge to interrupt, to explain, to fill the void. That's your insecurity flinching. That's your ego panicking. Let it pass. Let the silence breathe. You'll discover that people aren't just afraid of silence. They respect those who aren't. And here's something deeper. When you master silence in conversation, you begin mastering it within yourself. The external quiet starts reflecting an internal stillness. You stop needing to chase validation with your voice. You stop fearing awkward moments. You stop running from your own discomfort. And that's when you become magnetic, not because you're loud, but because your presence holds weight. In a world that equates volume with value, the silent one stands out. Not as mysterious, but as sovereign. As someone who doesn't speak from need, but from choice. And that's rare. That's why people lean in when you talk, because they can feel you don't need to talk. You're not seeking attention, you're delivering intention. This is the Stoic approach to conversation. Not flashy, not performative, but grounded, strategic, present. You learn to speak only when your words are more valuable than your silence, and sometimes they aren't. Sometimes the most powerful move is to say nothing at all. Remember this. A perfect sentence might impress someone for a moment, but a well-placed pause, one that shows confidence, awareness, and control, will stay with them far longer. So start practicing. In your next conversation, pause before responding. Observe how others handle the silence. Listen to what they reveal when they think you're simply thinking. Let your stillness create contrast. Let it speak for you. And as you do this more, you'll notice something strange. People will begin to treat you differently, with more patience, more attention, more respect. Not because you demanded it, but because you created space for it. And now that you've learned how to see others clearly, observe yourself honestly and speak with intention through silence. There's one final step. It's time to go deeper. It's time to understand how to read the entire environment, not just people, but patterns, not just actions, but the rhythms behind them. It's time to bring everything you've learned together and become untouchable. 4. See the pattern, move with wisdom. Right now, something is unfolding in your life that you're not fully seeing, not because it's hidden, but because you haven't yet trained your mind to see it. The world is not random. It moves in patterns. People move in patterns. Conversations, reactions, decisions. None of it happens in isolation. The Stoics believed in fate, but not in passivity. They saw the unfolding of events not as chance, but as consequence, as rhythm, as cause and effect. And they trained their minds to detect those rhythms, to move with them, not against them. Because when you learn to observe patterns, you begin to anticipate outcomes. And when you can anticipate outcomes, you can act, not react. Let's make this simple. Think about someone you know who stops by the same cafe every morning at 7:45 in the morning. They order the same drink, sit in the same corner, scroll the same news app. Most people would walk by them every day and think nothing of it. But someone who pays attention would see it for what it is, a pattern, not just a coffee habit, but a behavioral loop. And every loop contains a vulnerability. If you understand someone's rhythm, you understand how to influence it, not manipulate. Influence. There's a difference. Say you approach this person one day and offer to buy their drink before they even ask. You've remembered their order. You speak their rhythm. Suddenly, they're more open. Why? Because you've signaled awareness. You've stepped into their pattern without disturbing it. That's not luck. That's perception. In Stoic terms, this is what Epictetus meant when he said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." It's about aligning with the nature of things, not forcing, but understanding. Because the truth is, most people operate in unconscious cycles. Their words, reactions, and decisions are often not as spontaneous as they believe. But you'll only notice this if you're still enough, calm enough, disciplined enough to watch without judgment. Let me give you a more high-stakes example. Imagine you're negotiating with someone who's known for being difficult, arrogant, dismissive, always trying to dominate the room. On the surface, you might feel intimidated or frustrated. But the Stoic doesn't get distracted by surface emotion. You recall something this person mentioned weeks ago in passing. "I don't care about price. I just want to be the first to get the deal." That one sentence revealed a pattern. This isn't about value, it's about ego. So you wait, and when the moment is right, you present your offer. This is a one-time offer. No one else will see it before you. You don't raise your voice. You don't pressure. You simply align your words with his internal rhythm. And just like that, he agrees. That's not trickery. That's mastery. And it starts with observation. But here's the warning the Stoics would insist on. This kind of awareness is a double-edged sword. If used without virtue, it becomes manipulation, a way to exploit, not enlighten. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. And that includes the temptation to use insight to control others for selfish gain. So, if you're going to see patterns, really see them, you must also develop the discipline to use that knowledge ethically. This applies not just to others, but to yourself. Your life is a pattern. Your habits, your thoughts, your fears, they're not random. If you often feel anxious before social gatherings, that's a pattern. If you always feel energized after a morning walk, that's a pattern. If you procrastinate every time you face uncertainty, again, that's a pattern. But unless you step back and observe, you'll keep calling these feelings moods or phases when they're really routines playing out on repeat. Seneca once wrote, "Fate leads the willing and drags along the reluctant. Patterns are like rivers. They're going to move, with or without you. The question is, are you going to flow with them consciously or be swept away unaware? Start by mapping the small things. Notice when you feel your energy dip. Notice what kind of people drain you. Notice what kind of environments sharpen your thinking. Then go further. Start studying others, not to judge, but to understand. In meetings, observe who speaks first and who waits. In conversations, watch who looks for approval and who speaks with detachment. Patterns are everywhere. The person who always changes the subject when asked about their emotions. The friend who only reaches out when they need something. The co-worker who always blames others when things go wrong. Once you train your eye to see beyond the words, you'll never see the world the same again. But this awareness demands one more skill: patience. A mind obsessed with instant gratification can't observe patterns, because patterns aren't always obvious in the moment. They reveal themselves over time. A Stoic mind resists the urge to jump to conclusions. It stays present, records information, and waits. Because while others are reacting to what just happened, you're tracking what always happens. And that's the difference between playing the game and understanding the board. Let's bring this home with a powerful exercise. Think of a person in your life who confuses you. Maybe they're unpredictable, difficult, hard to read. Over the next 2 weeks, don't confront, don't analyze, just observe. Take notes, even if only in your mind. How do they react when someone disagrees with them? Do they change their energy depending on who's watching? Do they avoid certain topics? What compliments do they respond to most? You're not stalking, you're studying. You're watching for patterns, not moments. And at the end of that period, you'll have something most people never develop, an emotional map of a human being. Now imagine doing this not just with one person, but with 10, with everyone. You begin to move through the world with quiet confidence, because while others are trying to win the next moment, you're seeing 10 steps ahead. You're not reacting to what they just said. You're preparing for what they always do. This isn't about being smarter. It's about being more present, more intentional, more aligned with how reality actually works. But with great insight comes great responsibility. Use this gift wisely, not to manipulate outcomes, but to harmonize with them. Not to push people, but to meet them where they already are. In sales, there's a phrase: enter the conversation already happening in the customer's mind. But Stoics would take that further. They'd say, enter the life already happening beneath the surface. Walk into the rhythm, but do it with virtue. Because if you don't, if you use this awareness to deceive, it will destroy you from within. Insight without integrity is poison, but insight with purpose, that's power. And the rare few who possess both become the kind of leaders people trust, the kind of minds others can't ignore. So remember, people are patterns. Life is rhythm. You can fight it or you can learn to read it. And once you can read it, you can shape your decisions not based on guesswork, but on wisdom. And when you learn to see far enough ahead, when you live with that level of awareness, you no longer fear uncertainty. Because you've trained your mind to listen to yourself, to others, to the world. You've become the kind of person who doesn't need to predict the future to move with power. You simply understand how things unfold, and that's enough. And now that you've learned to see the deeper rhythm, to live 2 steps ahead while staying fully grounded, there's one last step. Here's how you become untouchable, not by overpowering others, but by mastering yourself. When you learn to see clearly without reacting, to observe patterns without judging, to speak with intention and move with wisdom, you rise above the noise. While others are busy trying to be heard, you become the one they quietly watch. That is real influence. That is real strength. If this message resonates with you and you're ready to keep building a mind that sees more and needs less, consider subscribing. We're just getting started. Drop a comment below with "I observe" if you're choosing clarity over chaos. I'd love to know who's walking this path with me. And remember, growth doesn't happen in noise. It happens in silence, in awareness, in those small daily choices that no one sees but you. Stay grounded, stay sharp. The next chapter will show you how to move in any room with quiet power. See you there.